are the Purposeful Project. We help entrepreneurs for free. Welcome to today's Pep Talk, where we'll take just 20 minutes to interview leading experts from around the world who share actionable know-how, insights and life lessons. To hear these incredible insights, follow us on Spotify, Apple Music or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Or you can simply visit thepurposefulproject.com, sign up to our mailing list and get the podcast in your inbox every single week. Ben, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you mind starting off by perhaps telling my audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thank you for having me on the podcast. My name is Ben, and I'm the head of open innovation at New World Development. The organization is called Eureka Nova. What we do is we look at startup technologies that are out in the market that can solve business pain points within New World Development. As a conglomerate here in Hong Kong, and all the different businesses that we're in, whether it's in property, hospitality, wellness, sports, there are always technology challenges. And some of these challenges may not have technologies that are readily available in the market. So our role is to go out there to identify startups and technologies and try to co-develop solutions for these pain points. And a little bit about kind of how we're involved in the Start Me Up HK Festival this time around is that over the past couple of years, we've been looking at how we can find impact-driven and purpose-led startups that are not only looking to drive their solutions from a commercial value, but they're actually looking to creating shared value, and they're trying to make an impact in people's lives as well. And that has helped us kind of define a topic that we think is very important, and we call it 1.5 degrees summit. And given all the research around climate challenges, we really saw multiple pillars that are levers to really help us achieve these climate challenge goals, especially by the end of the century. But to help us kind of maneuver that trajectory of our global average temperatures, we need to make those changes within this decade. Which is why we thought that 1.5 Degrees Summit was a very important piece of this year's Start Me Up HK Festival, because we're bringing in all the experts, all the startups, all the technologists that are involved in the technologies that are going to equip us to reach that 1.5 degrees Celsius goal by the end of the century.
Great idea. And this is a subject that I have to say, I think Hong Kong generally, if you were thinking of climate change and taking action to help, you don't think of Hong Kong. So in a way, I feel like you're putting Hong Kong on the map by having this discussion at this level.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really important subject as well. I mean, of course, and the fact that technology coming out of markets like Hong Kong could actually impact that change. That's frankly, I think, what a lot of people are holding on to, aren't they? I mean, we can see the devastation perhaps happening because of climate change, but I think a lot of people are relying on technology to solve the problem. Maybe thinking that it's too late. If we don't have technology solve it, we probably won't be able to solve it because people's habits can't change. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the thing with technology is that it's meant to equip us to make these changes. But to actually make these changes, it requires the user behavior. All of us have to want to make that change. But I feel that there is a gap in the market, and that gap is mainly educational. What are the pillars that are actually going to help us make the biggest bang for our buck when it comes to making climate change moves? And there are several, call it scientific-based papers out in the market, but it's not very user-friendly for you to understand how you could actually make these different changes, right? And that's why in our summit, we've boiled it down to four pillars. These four pillars are meant to be, hey, these are the changes that you can make. Here are the technologies available in the market that you can start looking into. Some of it is around when we look at diet. What alternatives are there out there? What are some of the technologies out there that are in the pipeline to help us curb, methane gases that are produced by, these huge farms, specifically in the beef business. We're also looking at smarter buildings. Buildings in general emit a lot of carbon emission. But we need them. We work there. We live in there. So what are the solutions and technologies available out there that are going to make these buildings smarter, greener, We're also looking at industries. How can industries start looking at making changes in their whole entire supply chain? And one particular area that we're looking at is also renewable energy and carbon capture. These are four essential pillars that we're putting on the table, and we're bringing experts to come in to talk about it. And we think it's helping people understand that it's actually really easy to digest. And there are technologies currently available and they're in the pipeline that's going to help us better equip ourselves to get to that global goal when it comes to climate change.
Is there, I mean, I think this is a really interesting way that you're putting it, because I feel like the practical steps is often what's missing. We have the lofty goal and people feel guilty. They know they should be doing more, but an actual practical, guide. I've not really seen that out there to help people step through how to be more sustainable. And one of the things I see, I've spent years in Hong Kong, as you know, but I'm now in London, and you've got brands like Marks and Spencers, which I know are also in Hong Kong, and they're producing a lot of stuff in plastic. A lot of, even the cucumbers you buy are wrapped in plastic. So I feel like corporations also have a responsibility to change, to adapt. And is there something along the kind of step-by-step guide for corporates in the same way that you're doing it for individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of frameworks and agreements and consortiums out in the market that corporates can dive into to essentially be a part of this movement. From us, from a New World development perspective, in our pipeline, we've set goals that are specific to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So by 2030, our GBA properties, we're looking to be 100% renewable energy. And when we're looking at our President Hong Kong developing, we have a triple platinum green building in Kings Road in Quarry Bay. So it's essentially setting a benchmark. And the good thing is that people are following. People are looking at these certificates and how they could actually make their buildings more optimized, more green, more friendly to the environment. They're also looking at further how to optimize these buildings, because even though you built the building, there are a lot of technologies out there that can further optimize, how you spend your energy, right? And again, I go back to the pillars. Where do you focus your impact, right? We talk a little bit about waste management. We talk about, packaging, et cetera. Those things are very important, especially to drive that essential, 1 foot into the door to start making a change. But you need these large corporations to make those big changes and big steps when we look at renewable energy, right? If you can do carbon capture and renewable energy in your properties moving forward, in your corporate strategy in general, those are big changes that are going to add to driving that trajectory down so that we can get to a realistic 1.5 degrees Celsius. Because right now, the trajectory that we're at, it is not there. Now, we're looking at probably anywhere between 3 to 5% Celsius by the end of the century at this state at the moment.
Well, for anyone listening that wants to join the debate, or perhaps you're listening to this after the Start Me Up Festival, which is possible, then you'll be able to get access to Ben and his organisation's chat on this subject and the thought leaders on this subject in the links below. So do feel free to go and check it out. I guess, Ben, I wouldn't talk about your personal background. I know you're an angel investor in the past. You started the startup Launchpad, which, for my listeners again that don't know, this had a big impact on the market. Tell us a little bit about that company you started and your angel investment personal philosophy.
Yeah, with Startup Launchpad, what we were trying to achieve was, again, help a lot of these companies get access to market. We find that a lot of these startups in the very beginning, they have great ideas. They have the initial resources that are made available to them, whether it's private or public bodies, to get them to a certain stage. And specifically at the IoT hardware startups that we were looking at, we saw that they're able to get their early adopters to essentially buy into their product. And if we all have read the Crossing the Chasm book, we understand how each demographic would behave. the biggest challenge for a lot of these startups was to enter the early mass majority. And to enter the early mass majority, we were looking at, okay, well, how do the early mass majority shop? And they don't go on Kickstarter.com. They don't go Indiegogo to find these type of products. They're typically shopping at your brick and mortars, the big name ones. And especially for early stage hardware consumer products, to get into brick and mortars is a very difficult proposition, just because that whole entire business model is very traditional. So what we're trying to do with Startup Launchpad is to bridge that gap. We knew that there was a demand on the buyer side that wanted unique early stage technology products that they can bring their customers, make it sexy, and try to really sell it at a large scale and drive foot traffic into the stores. And then the demand on the supply side of startups is, I need to get into these markets because I need to be able to make sure that my products get out there as quickly as possible. I have the dollars to feed it behind it. And then there are no competitors that could achieve or try to copy these products. Because we know when it comes to consumer electronics, these products life cycles are, at hyperspeed. Every 6 months they're changing. So that was what we were looking at. From an angel investment perspective, outside Startup Launchpad, for the few companies that I've looked into and I put my personal money behind, it's just a matter of, does it make business sense? It just boils down to that, to as simple as that. Especially from an angel stage, we can look at some of the companies that have these kind of moonshot ideas and they're great. However, I just go back to, does it just make simple business sense? Do you, as a startup founder, understand the margins that are going to help your company scale? Do you know what it would require to get your company to scale? What resources are you going to be able to tap into? And are you realistic? That's a big acumen, I would say, that's required for any of the companies that I look into.
It's a good overview. I think being realistic sounds, I think to some people that are aspiring to build a business, maybe a bit practical, but I think it's very true. You want people that are authentic, accept the challenges ahead, but of course have vision. So very, very interesting insight into how you think, Ben, and I agree with you. Can we just for a second, for those listening that don't know Hong Kong, talk about why you think Hong Kong is such a a vibrant startup ecosystem? What do you think it has that perhaps other markets don't have?
Hong Kong is such a unique city, and I have to say that because I'm not originally from Hong Kong. I'm from New Jersey, United States, and coming to Hong Kong has really opened my eyes to how dynamic this market is, and not just the market in itself. I mean, when you come to Hong Kong, you're here for business. There's no way to escape that. You're here to make your network. You're here to try to drive valuable business, and you're really trying to capture everyone's mindset, which is very aligned with you. Everyone's here with a commercial mindset, right? Work-life balance, throw that out the window a little bit. But here you're really looking to make money. And every one in the stakeholder is going to have that type of, that stakeholder ecosystem has that network to be able to help you bridge those access points. And some of the access points is what makes Hong Kong unique. Literally, if you take a bus from Central, 45 minutes later, you're in Shenzhen. And this is pre-COVID days, right? But once the border opens up, you could take a speed train from Kowloon and you get to Shenzhen in 14 minutes. You could take a flight to Taiwan in 2 hours. You can access Southeast Asia in 4 hours. To go from a city like Hong Kong to access different markets in just a matter of hours or minutes, that's just unheard of. And I think if you have a company that you're trying to access different markets in a very short amount of time, Hong Kong's the place to be. And that's what makes Hong Kong so dynamic, in my opinion. And the great thing is that the territories around Hong Kong, all these different countries, also view Hong Kong as that access point to other places. So there's this kind of rotation of people that are always coming into Hong Kong, which makes it really, really cool.
I know there's been a lot of bad press for Hong Kong in the last few years, and I've been in London, so looking at it from the outside perspective. But I actually agree with everything you've just said. That Hong Kong is such an incredible city. It's been people have been predicting its demise for as long as I've been involved in Hong Kong. In 1997, when I put the handover, it's like, well, that's the end of Hong Kong. They were wrong, again and again. And so Hong Kong, you're quite right. It has an incredible connectivity to it. And for those listening that don't understand Shenzhen, I mean, I was just reading that Shenzhen has the most patents in the world. It's the number one patent location. I think 82% of all patents are based out of Shenzhen, which is just gives you some idea. Global patents, right? It gives you some idea of the scale of the I guess the manufacturing and execution ability of the city that Hong Kong's connected to. But do you think, just on a personal level, Ben, do you think entrepreneurs are born or bred?
It's a really good question. I feel like it's a combination of both. There's no kind of, born or bred kind of thing. I think if you're born with it, you still have to be bred. So I do think that, it is innate that you have this kind of optimism to solve problems. Those are your entrepreneurs that they're constantly thinking, you give them a problem. They're constantly thinking of solutions. I mean, that's awesome. And however, that optimism needs a little bit of polishing sometimes. And I do feel that the training, when you go through these programs as a startup, as an entrepreneur, those are very valuable. I've seen great purpose and ideas, but all the founder needs is either help, network, or a little bit of polishing to get that business acumen there. And then boom, you've got a business. On the other end, if you're kind of essentially bred to be an entrepreneur, if you don't have that question in mind of how do I solve problems all the time, if you don't have that optimism or you're not inquisitive, well, then you're not an entrepreneur. I think that's one important factor. If you're inquisitive as a person, you could be bred to be a successful entrepreneur, in my opinion.
Great answer. Now I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you, who do you think is going to be the next Hong Kong unicorn? We've got 10 now, I know. So who's next?
I wish, Simon, I wish I knew. I would not be working if I knew. I will say that there's a space, a category of startups that I think will be where the next unicorn will be born, and in Hong Kong, because of the climate and the network of sophisticated investors in Hong Kong. I do think that the next unicorn will be a fintech company. Just because the base is there, and these startups just need to be able to leverage it. If you told me that the next unicorn in Hong Kong is doing fashion tech, let's just say it, I'm just making it up. I think that's a harder runway for them. I think the fintech companies have a better runway to be successful in Hong Kong.
Actually, I don't know the breakdown of each of the ones. I mean, I know it's interesting when you look at actually what unicorns have come out of Hong Kong, because actually fintech should be the first, second, and third because of the financial hub element and the talent that's really poured into the startup ecosystem since the financial crisis, when everyone a lot of smart people left banking in 2008, 2009 and started getting involved in the startup scene. So I think your prediction is right. I think we're going to see a whole run of the fintech companies coming out of Hong Kong that are unicorns, and of course, therefore, potentially hugely scalable businesses. But just before we wrap up, a couple of things. I was really interested in the open innovation model that you're running at New World Group. I think for people listening, some of our listeners actually have companies and are thinking about how to innovate. It seems to me you're running quite a unique and exciting model there, where you're, literally, I guess, working with external organizations and structures to innovate your own organization, which I think is normally people have it in-house, but that whole external exposure piece is quite interesting. Talk us through quickly that model. How does it work?
The model is very simple on how we drive open innovation. In every innovation project, we call them business integration projects internally. In any integration that we develop, we need to make sure that a KPI that's tied to a business value is always present. That could be revenue driven, that could be cost optimization, it could be data driven, or it could be ecosystem driven. Ecosystem meaning that you're looking to move one customer segment to another customer segment that could benefit your particular business unit. So once we have that identified, then we look at the resources available, because that's the next big question. Do you have the financial means in your budget to actually drive these pilot integration projects that could materialize into something that's more commercial? So that's the way that we measure every integration, and this is why we've been able to drive such a high conversion rate. I mean, we just brought in 14 startups in our last Impact Commons cohort, and 12 of them landed commercial arrangements with our different businesses. So we really do the homework in defining the pain point, what the solution is, and what KPIs they're trying to achieve, and then manage the expectations of both the business unit side as well as the startup side, so that we do have, call it, a somewhat of an agreement of, if a pilot is landed and if it doesn't meet these KPIs, then it actually does mean into something larger, something bigger that both sides could achieve in a commercial way at a large scale. So that's our approach.
And again, for anyone listening outside of Hong Kong who doesn't know who New World Group is, they're an incredible group doing incredible things. So I've always felt, and I still feel it today, that people, startups, anyone listening, you sometimes don't realize the power of teaming up with a corporation. Sometimes they're seen as the enemy, or maybe the one you're looking to compete with. But this 1+1 equals 11 model, of teaming up. Corporations have their power and they have their weaknesses, and same with startups. I mean, one thing corporate bring is scale. So I think it's just great to see a wonderful organization like New World also supporting the ecosystem as they are, with you at the helm, Ben. So thank you for that. Look, just before we wrap up, one thing I wondered if you would be kind enough to offer any words of wisdom for any aspiring entrepreneurs out there.
One of my biggest things right now is, are you driving impact with your startup? I think there are a lot of models out there that you're not really reinventing the wheel, but if you are looking at how do you take that model and look at driving impact and affecting people in a real way, that's very valuable, and it drives purpose into every founder. So always think about that and how you could create shared value in all of your models.
I love it. Are you driving impact? I ask myself the same question as you asked the question, and it keeps you on point. Actually, keeps you. And if you get that motivation right, like you say, it leads to purpose. And in my view, purpose leads to persistence, which equals success over time. So
absolutely.
So it's a really, really good question. Are you driving impact? And keep that in the back of your mind, and it will keep you motivated. So, Ben, always a pleasure to chat to you. I really appreciate you taking time out. Go enjoy the Startup Festival. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge here, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Simon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Pep Talk today, powered by the Purposeful Project. If you found it interesting, please give us a review and follow us. In addition, you can sign up to our website and get loads more free entrepreneur knowledge, as well as get access to Pep Talk and the Purposeful Project podcast direct in your inbox every week.